Hey friends, Elizabeth here from Plant-Based Bride, and I'm back again with another bullet journal video. This time we are planning out September 2018. So I asked on my Instagram what theme you wanted to see for September, and I got a bunch of incredible suggestions, so thank you so much. I will do my very best to do all of these themes at some point. But I had quite a few that kind of overlapped. So I got floral and nature, I got fall, wildflowers, another leaves or fall, autumn colors or autumn weather, I got bears, I got mushrooms, woodland, foraging theme, so many good themes. And I decided to combine all of those together to create my own sort of fall-esque wildflower woodland style theme, and I'm really excited about this one. It was very fun to do. If you are interested in having a say in what my bullet journals look like and getting more involved, seeing more pictures and behind the scenes, I would love to have you over on my Instagram page. I will link it in the description box down below. It's just a lot easier over there to gauge what you all want to see, to put up polls and ask for suggestions, and it's really just a very fun community aspect. So I'm starting off with the cover page, and I decided to do a very loose, sort of whimsical wreath of wildflowers around an S for September. So I started off with drawing just a few circles around and around, not worrying about keeping them straight. I wanted them to be kind of wobbly. And then I just went around adding various leaves and flowers and just plants that reminded me of the forest, wildflowers, all the way around. Starting off with my Sakura Micron 005 pen. It's a very thin point pen, to really be able to get in and get all those details of the tiny little flowers and leaves. I also used the 005 pen to plan out the S and the flowers within the S, but then I went back in with my 08 micron pen, which is a lot thicker, to fill it in, just so it wouldn't take quite so much time to fill in the black for the entire S. As always, I will be pinning all of my inspiration photos to my Bujo board on Pinterest, which will be linked below if you want to check it out. Next, it's time to add color, and I'm using my Tombow brush pens for this. All of the colors that I used in this video will be linked below. I always have a supplies I used section in the description box, so check that out if you want to see the exact colors used throughout my September plan with me. And as many of you know at this point, if you've been watching my videos for a while, I do prefer to apply Tombows into my bullet journal using the clear blender pen over applying them directly. I find it adds a lot more of a sheer look. It allows me to build color more without worrying quite so much about any kind of ghosting or bleeding through the paper, and it also allows me to blend colors more easily together and get more of a watercolor subtle look. So I always use a plastic page protector, use my Tombow directly to color on the plastic to get a pool of pigment, and then I pick up some of the pigment with the clear Tombow brush pen, and that's what I use to apply it to the page. This technique was especially useful for the flowers that come off as being pink, but I actually used a red Tombow to get that look. Because I was using the clear blender, it applied much more desaturated or much lighter than the color actually is, and it allowed me to build up darker color towards the center or the bottom of the petals and lighter pink on the outer edges. It was also helpful on the leaves because I wanted to have sort of a lighter green on the outside of the leaf and then a darker green along the veins of the leaf in the center. So that allowed me to do a baseline of a light green and then to add a very subtle hint of the darker, slightly desaturated green to the center, just to give more of a fall color overall, but also a little more dimension and interest to the leaves so they're not just a flat single color. I considered adding color to the flowers inside the S, but I actually decided I really liked the black and white on the center, contrasting with the colors of the wreath, so I decided to leave the flowers inside the S just white. But of course, you could always add color to that, and I think it would look really beautiful. Next, I am using watercolors for my quote page. I decided to do a little combination of Tombows and watercolors this time around. Again, I asked you on my Instagram if you'd rather see me use watercolors or Tombows in my journal, and a bunch of you voted for one or the other, and quite a few of you said you liked to see both. So I wanted to make everyone happy and decided to use Tombows for the most part, but to do one watercolor painting just to have a little variety. And for my watercolor painting, I wanted to do a couple mushrooms. I did them in a very cartoony, non-realistic way, just for fun. And I'm using this Winsor & Newton Cotman watercolor set. As you may recall, back in July when I did my moon theme was the first time I had used watercolors, and I wasn't sure if I liked it, so I only purchased these two brushes you see on the screen and a couple tubes of Winsor & Newton Cotman watercolor paints just for my purposes of that video. I didn't want to buy a full palette because I wasn't sure if it was something that I was going to enjoy and want to continue with, but I found I really liked it, and when I decided I wanted to do a little bit of watercolor this time around, I knew I was going to need quite a few different colors to get the look I was going for, and I didn't want to buy a bunch of tubes because that would be pretty expensive, and I wanted to try out a sort of preset palette, and this was the smallest one that I could find at my local art shop. I really enjoy the combination of colors. I think it really covers your bases as far as basic colors that you need individually as well as colors you'll need for mixing. And it also comes with a water pen, a water brush pen that you can use with those colors, which I didn't actually try out this time around, but I will be trying out very soon. And as I already said, I will be linking the specific palette that I purchased in the description box if you are interested in starting watercolors and are looking for a smaller, more affordable palette. I believe this one was around 24 Canadian dollars, so not so bad to start you off, and you don't need to buy anything else because you have the palette for mixing, you have all the colors you need, and you also have a water brush pen, so you don't need to buy brushes. So I'm just mixing colors, trying to get the tones that I like, and starting off pretty light and building the color over quite a few layers. This painting took a long time because I wasn't really sure what I wanted it to look like. I was kind of winging it, and I just kind of kept mixing colors and trying to find the depth I wanted and trying to get the feeling I wanted over time. I was playing a lot with how red or orange I wanted the caps of the mushrooms to be, and you can see as I go along it kind of goes back and forth, but I feel like in the end I found a pretty good medium between it being too much of a pinky red and too orange. That is, of course, the thing with watercolors. It's nice because you can do very sheer layers and build up, but it can take quite a bit of time if you want a darker color to really get the depth of color that you want. And I definitely found that with the caps of these mushrooms. It took me quite a bit of time to get the shadowed side of the caps to be as dark as I wanted them to be. So here you can see I started to work on the shadow of the stem of the mushroom on the left, and I didn't like how gray the shadow I was using was. I used too much of the black in there, and so you can see that I kind of go in there and I try to recover it by using more of a warm toned brown and covering that up until you can't really see how gray or cool toned that shadow was initially, because as soon as I put it down, I knew that it wasn't quite the shade that I wanted. As I mentioned quite a few times in all of my moon videos that I put out in July, I'm very new to watercolors, so I'm not an expert whatsoever, not really showing you how you should do things, but just showing you the process I used to create these mushrooms that I ended up being very happy with. So once I was happy with sort of a base layer, I decided to go in with my Sakura Micron 005 pen, the very thin tipped pen, to just draw in basically the outlines of everything on the painting. I just wanted a tiny bit more definition to the painting and felt that adding an ink outline would be the easiest way to get the effect I was going for. And once I added the pen, I realized that the actual pigment, the actual painting was a lot lighter and more desaturated than I'd wanted, and so I actually went in after the ink dried to add more depth to the color and more watercolor paint on top, which also helped to kind of blend the ink into the painting and make the lines not seem so stark. So I'm just moving the painting into my bullet journal, just gluing it in with regular glue. I also found this quote that I really enjoyed on Pinterest, which is "Autumn killed the summer with the softest kiss" by DJ. So I just typed this up on my computer and printed it out and glued it in. So here I am adding in more pigment to really deepen the color, really bring up the saturation of the painting. I also wanted to take a minute to showcase some of the awesome recreations that you tagged me in on Instagram. This is one of my favorite parts of Instagram, is logging in and seeing that I've been tagged in a photo and going to check it out and seeing that someone spent time recreating something that I made. It's so flattering. It's so wonderful. You are all so talented and make things your own and do some really interesting creative things. And I just love that community that we're building on Instagram. So if you're not following me on Instagram right now, head into the description box, click the link and go follow me. It's a really fun community to be in over there. And if you do recreate anything from this plan with me or any of my past plan with me's, or if you just want to show me your bullet journal, be sure to tag me so that I can see it. And I'm carrying the brown down along the stem, I suppose you'd call it, of the mushroom, just to blend the depth of color all the way down. So now I am going in with my Winsor & Newton gouache, which is the white, more opaque paint that I bought previously, and I'm using that to add the white dots to the mushroom caps. Gouache is a great option for highlights for watercolor paint because it is more opaque than regular white watercolor paint, so it shows up much better on the top of the painting, and you don't need to build it up nearly as much to get a good highlight. And then just going in with final touches to really get the highs and lows, the lightness and the darkness that I wanted for the painting. So now I'm moving on to my monthly spread, and I'm starting with the header. I decided to do something reminiscent of the S that I did on the cover page, but a little bit different so that it wouldn't be too repetitive or boring. So I'm starting off with an S in a similar font or shape to the S on the front cover, and just filling it in using my Sakura Micron 08 pen, which is the thicker nibbed pen. And once I'm happy with the shape of that, I went in with my much thinner 005 pen and started drawing out a bunch of leaves and flowers all the way around. And for this, I just wanted it to look very wild, very foresty, and so I tried to use a bunch of different styles of leaves and flowers to really give that kind of random wildflower effect instead of it being too uniform. Now using my Sakura Micron 01 pen, I am just writing in all the dates of the month. And going back in with my 005, I'm drawing a little area of wildflowers along the bottom here in the open space. Again, trying to have a little bit of consistency throughout so that it feels like they belong together, but using a lot of different types of flowers, again, for that kind of wildflower look, and including a mushroom just for that consistency throughout my entire month. Now I tried a little bit of a different type of lettering this month. I wanted to do sort of a typewriter effect, and it's definitely harder than it looks. I'm not 100% happy with how every single letter turned out, but it was definitely fun to try, and I'm excited to keep working on my ability to make typewriter letters that are consistent enough to look like they all belong together, but also have variety, because when you're using an actual typewriter, you do get variety in the different letters, and that's one of the things that appeals to me most about typewriters in general and the kind of fonts that you get from them. And I added these little dots and lines to kind of give the impression of little sections of the letters that may have extra ink left over when you do use a typewriter. So now I'm going in with color, again using the exact same technique I used on the cover page of applying the Tombows to the plastic and then picking up the color using my clear Tombow and applying it to the page that way. So again, going in with the lighter green on all of the leaves, and later I'll be going in with the darker green along the veins to add more depth. And I used all of the same Tombows for this spread that I did for the cover page to have consistency in the color palette. This process of coloring in using the Tombows definitely took a good amount of time, but I was really happy with how it turned out. I liked that I was able to get a little bit more dimension in the colors, and that made the time spent worth it for me. I know some people sometimes comment and say, how long did this take you? I don't have that much free time, which I totally understand. And I just make the time because it's something that I enjoy, but I completely understand if you don't have the time. And that's okay too. I love simple bullet journals, and I used very simple bullet journals with no added art for a very long time. I also wanted to add a quote in here, and this one was by F. Scott Fitzgerald, and it's, "Life starts all over again when it gets crisp in the fall." So here I'm moving on to my health tracker, and you can see it looks vastly different from my regular habits and mood and sleep trackers. I just decided I wanted to try something completely different and see if I liked it or not. I'd been using the same sort of format for a very long time. And I also wanted to try tracking a few more things just to see if it could give me a little bit more insight. So I split it up into 3 different sections. The first one is sleep, where I have different qualifications for how my sleep is. So great, good, average, restless, fitful, and none. I then moved on to a physical section, which is about physical aches and pains. So headache, neck and shoulders, back, hips, feet and legs, stomach, and sick. And then on to the last section, which is for moods and symptoms. And here I wanted to combine all of the moods I may experience in a day, as well as any of the symptoms of my mental illness that I may experience. As most of you probably know at this point, I suffer from depression and anxiety, and I'm very vocal about that on my channel. So I wanted to be able to be a little bit more in depth in how I tracked my moods and symptoms so that I could share them with my therapist. So these are the moods and symptoms that I have listed: happy, motivated, content, fine, stressed, sad, angry, hopeless, rage, no appetite, guilt or shame, numbness, anxiety, shakiness, racing heart, restlessness, fatigue, low concentration, irritable, tense muscles, panic attack. So my plan is each day to add a dot in the box for how my sleep was, any aches and pains I may have had, as well as any moods and symptoms I had throughout the day. And then at the end of the month, connect all of the sleep dots, connect all of the physical dots, and then connect all of the mood and symptoms dots to get a couple different graphs kind of showing how my month went. So I'll definitely post some progress photos and a final photo at the end of the month on Instagram so you can see how I'm using it. I'm still playing around with if this is going to be functional for me or not, but I definitely want to give it a try. And this was inspired by a spread that I saw in one of the many bullet journal groups I'm in on Facebook. I also wanted to add a little bit of artsiness to this spread because it's so full of just the actual tracker. So I added some flowers, some interest to the actual title of the spread, and then I created the silhouette of a bear using wildflowers. So now I'm moving on to the last spread of this video, which is the first week. I like to use a running weekly layout, which I've made an entire video on explaining. If you would like to learn more about how I actually use this weekly spread, I'll link it in the cards and in the description box below. But I did add a little extra thing to this weekly this time around. As you may have noticed, there were no habits on my health tracker, and I normally have a habits page. That's because I felt like I was trying to track too many habits, many of which are already habits and I don't need to track, like drinking 3 liters of water a day or doing proper skincare. Those are things that I am already in the habit of doing and don't really need to track. And then I was trying to track a bunch of habits that I really haven't established yet and just was finding that it was too many things and it was overwhelming and I wasn't really using it. So I decided to narrow it down to 3 habits I really want to establish in September. And those 3 habits are waking up by 8 a.m. and taking my temperature, doing at least 15 minutes of yoga in the morning and at night, and spending at least 20 minutes cleaning or tidying my house every day. So those are the 3 habits I really want to establish as daily habits, and I decided it may be a little bit easier for me to actually stick with them and develop them into habits if I have them on my weekly spread instead of on a separate spread. Now I know on the page it says 30 minutes of yoga in the AM and PM. That's because that is the ideal. I would love to actually do 30 minutes in the morning and at night, but I am trying to be easy on myself so it will be easier to establish as a habit. And for that reason, as long as I do 15 minutes, I'm treating that as a win. And I've also found that if I get on my mat and start doing yoga, I'll continue to do it for longer than I planned. And of course, as always, I am adding in all of the pages to my index so I can find everything in my bullet journal whenever I need it. So that is it for my September bullet journal setup. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you like this sort of wildflowers, mushrooms, foraging, forest fall theme. I'm really, really happy that a bunch of you suggested all of these different words and theme ideas that just gave me a really great idea for what I wanted to do. I had a lot of fun incorporating both Tombows and watercolors into this spread, as well as printing some quotes off my computer and gluing them in, and trying out a new lettering style. This is actually going to be the last month that I'm going to be able to fit into my Rhodia web notebook, so I'm going to be starting a brand new bullet journal in October, so get ready for a new bullet journal setup video, and let me know in the comments below if you'd like me to combine the new bullet journal setup and my October setup into one video, or if you'd rather see them as separate videos. And that is it for this very long September Plan With Me video. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to give this video a like if you did, and subscribe if you haven't already. I would love to have you part of this family. And if you're bored and looking for something else to do, here's some more videos you can check out right now. Bye, friends.